The peace I'd been longing for decades finally felt within reach. After 42 years designing electrical systems for hospitals and industries, retirement swept in like a gentle autumn breeze. My name is William Harrison. I'm 68 years old, and I just moved into residential Palmeiras, a middle-class condo in a tree-lined neighborhood. The apartment isn't huge, but it has a balcony that overlooks a small garden with an IP tree that blooms majestically. I planned the move meticulously during my last months at work. Every box labeled, every piece of furniture exactly where it should be. Organization has always been my strong suit. My routine quickly fell into place. Breakfast at 7 a.m., a morning walk around the condo, some reading during the afternoon, and at night a few hours of documentaries or classic movies while I sipped chamomile tea. The high-speed internet I set up let me watch technical videos and keep in touch with old colleagues. It was the little things that made my days peaceful. The neighbors seemed polite, though somewhat distant. The woman in Unit 204, Samantha Wilson, waved at me a couple of times in the elevator. With her 52 years, always impeccably styled hair and elegant clothes, she introduced herself as a marketing consultant. I noticed she often had visitors, but she kept a reserved air, which I initially took as discretion. I thought I'd finally found my haven of serenity. Or so I believed during those first few weeks. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get access to more stories like this. The first sign came during a video call with my daughter, who lives in California. The image froze 3 times and the call dropped. I found it strange, considering I had signed up for the most robust plan available. The next day, while watching a documentary on naval engineering, the resolution dropped drastically. I called technical support, and the representative confirmed that my speed was way below what I paid for. But they couldn't find any issues with the line. "Maybe it's the router, Mr. Harrison," he suggested. Being an engineer, I wasn't satisfied with superficial explanations. I installed a network monitoring software, and the results intrigued me. There were data usage spikes at times when I wasn't even home. The traffic showed streaming services being accessed on multiple devices simultaneously. That's when I noticed something odd. The strength of the Wi-Fi signal would fluctuate when people entered Samantha's apartment. A coincidence? Maybe. But my technical gut told me otherwise. A closer inspection of my equipment revealed something disturbing. A small device was discreetly attached to the back of my router, a professional Wi-Fi repeater positioned strategically to pick up and redistribute my signal. The installation had been done with technical know-how, carefully hidden behind some furniture. I followed the cable coming out of the device. It ran through the air vent and headed toward the neighboring apartment. The conclusion was inevitable. Samantha was stealing my internet. I removed the invasive equipment and beefed up my digital security, changing passwords and adding MAC address filters. I was pondering how to approach the situation when the doorbell rang furiously the next morning. "My internet stopped working last night. Did you mess with something?" Samantha said, standing at my door, her usual friendly demeanor now clouded by barely concealed irritation. "I found an unauthorized device connected to my router," I replied calmly. "Someone was accessing my network illegally." Her face flushed. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've kept the equipment in case you want to identify it." I showed her the device I had removed. It was fascinating to watch her expression change. Surprise, then anger, and finally a feigned indignation. "Yes, that is mine. My technician must have installed it by mistake when he set up my network." "Installed by mistake inside my apartment, hidden behind my router? Are you accusing me of something?" Her voice shot up an octave. "I have my own internet. Why would I need yours? That's what I'm trying to figure out." "You're just an old paranoid," she exclaimed, turning abruptly. "I'm going to report you to the management for defamation." The next afternoon, a police cruiser parked in front of the building. 2 officers knocked on my door, a tired-looking middle-aged man and a sharp-eyed young policewoman. "Mr. Harrison? We received a complaint from Ms. Wilson. She claims you broke into her apartment and stole some of her electronic equipment." I stayed calm. "Officers, that's completely false. In fact, I found this device," I showed them the repeater, "connected to my router without my permission. I have security cameras installed since I moved in. I can show you the recordings." I played the footage that clearly showed no one but me entering the apartment over the past few days. I also displayed photos of the installed device on my router, and the monitoring software's logs recording the unusual usage. "Ms. Wilson stated that her technician installed the equipment with her permission," commented the policewoman, sounding skeptical. "I never gave such permission. Besides, how do you explain a device of hers installed in my apartment without my knowledge?" The officers exchanged looks. Mr. Harrison, would you like to file a formal complaint? For now, no. I just want this to stop. When the officers left, I saw Samantha watching from a slightly open door. Her look no longer held the false cordiality of our earlier encounters. It was pure resentment. 1 week later, I received a notification from the condo management. Samantha had filed a formal complaint alleging that I was harassing her and making unfounded accusations that were tarnishing her reputation. The document requested my presence at a meeting with the manager. At the meeting, Samantha came in with a folder full of papers. "He's been stalking me since he moved in," she declared, her voice choked. "He made up this absurd story about internet theft because he doesn't like having an independent woman as a neighbor." Mr. Mendez, the manager, an approximately 60-year-old man, listened attentively. "Mr. Harrison, these are serious allegations," he commented after hearing Samantha out. I calmly presented my evidence: the device, logs of abnormal traffic, photos of the installed equipment. I also consulted my internet provider. They confirmed that my data usage has doubled in recent months, while the neighboring apartment's usage is minimal, which is inconsistent with the heavy streaming Ms. Wilson claims to do. Samantha tried to interrupt several times, but the manager raised his hand. "Please, let him finish." "I'm not interested in conflict," I concluded. "I just want to live in peace and use what I pay for." The manager adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Wilson, this evidence is quite compelling. This is ridiculous. He fabricated all of this." Her voice rose. "I'm going to sue the condo if you keep listening to this. This privacy invader." The manager sighed. "For now, let's adjourn this meeting. I'll review the rules on the inappropriate use of the facilities and make a decision." As I left, I realized that Samantha wasn't going to give up easily. The battle was just beginning. While waiting for the manager's decision, I decided to dig deeper. Something about Samantha's confident poise bothered me. She acted like she'd been through similar situations before and always come out unscathed. In the elevator, I met Mr. Oliveira, a 75-year-old gentleman who had lived in the building for over a decade. "You've been living here a long time," I remarked casually. "Do you know Ms. Wilson from Unit 204 well?" His expression changed immediately. "Ah, Samantha." He looked around as if checking that we were alone. "I had issues with her when she moved in about 5 years ago. My internet started failing too." A chill ran down my spine. "You did too?" "Yes, but at the time I thought it was a coincidence." Later, Roberto from Unit 305 began complaining about the same thing. He confronted Samantha, but she intimidated him so badly he ended up moving out. He said she was stalking him and made a scene at the condo meeting. Mr. Oliveira sighed. "The poor guy couldn't take the pressure, especially after she spread rumors that he was a pervert who spied on her. This information changed everything." I thanked Mr. Oliveira and, determined, went over to the condo administrator. Ms. Peixoto, a middle-aged woman who had managed the building for 8 years, received me with a tired look. "Mr. Harrison, I've already heard about your problem with Ms. Wilson. Actually, I came to ask about something broader. Are there records of previous complaints involving her?" The administrator hesitated, but then opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "We normally don't share this, but considering you're already involved..." She flipped through the documents. "In the past 5 years, we've had 7 formal complaints involving Ms. Wilson. 4 of them related to internet issues with neighbors." "And how did those cases end?" "In 3 of them, the residents ended up moving out. In the other, the person simply gave up on the complaint." She looked at me seriously. "You're not the first to bring technical evidence, but Samantha always fights back with claims of harassment or discrimination. Many prefer to avoid the hassle." I thanked Ms. Peixoto and decided to take another step. I contacted my internet provider requesting a detailed history of my network usage. After confirming my identity, the representative confirmed something alarming. "Mr. Harrison, your usage pattern is extremely irregular. We see spikes in usage at times when you said you weren't home. Also, the MAC addresses connected to your network are far more numerous than what one would expect for a single occupant apartment. Have you received similar complaints at this address before?" There was a pause. "I can't reveal specific information about other customers, but..." Another pause. "Let's just say your address is flagged in our system for monitoring of potential misuse. That means..." "It means we've had similar problems at this location before, sir. I can send a specialized network security technician for a full inspection if you want." I scheduled a visit for the next day. When the technician, Fernando, arrived, he meticulously examined my installation and found another device that I'd overlooked. A small wireless repeater hidden inside the air conditioning duct, positioned to capture my signal. This is professional equipment, Fernando explained, showing me the device. It's not something an amateur could set up. See this code engraved here? It's the same model we provide for companies that need to extend their networks. How could someone get their hands on this type of equipment? Either they work in IT or they know someone who does. I can check the serial number to trace its origin. 2 days later, Fernando called with surprising news. The device was purchased by a consulting firm called Wilson Marketing Solutions. It's registered in the name of Samantha Wilson. Now I had solid evidence. Samantha wasn't just an opportunist. She was a systematic predator who had been running this scam regularly. With that knowledge, I requested another meeting with the manager, this time bringing all the documents I'd collected. The manager looked visibly shaken. This is much more serious than I imagined. I'm going to call for an emergency board meeting. Before that, I suggested, I'd like to install additional cameras facing my apartment's entrance. I have reasons to believe I might face retaliation. Do that, Mr. Harrison, and keep me posted on any incidents. I didn't have to wait long for Samantha's reaction. The night after installing the new cameras, I was reading in my living room when I heard a deafening sound. The glass on my window shattered, and a tennis ball-sized rock rolled across the floor. I immediately activated the security camera app on my cell phone. In the footage, I clearly saw Samantha in the hallway, looking around furtively before hurling the rock at my window. Then, she sprinted back into her apartment. I called the police, and while waiting, gathered the recordings and prepared a detailed report of the incident. When the same officers from before arrived this time, their expressions were much more serious. "We have footage of you throwing the rock," I explained, showing them the video. "This is vandalism, Mr. Harrison," said the policewoman. "That's a criminal offense. And it's not an isolated event," I added, handing over the folder with all the documentation I'd gathered. "She has a history of intimidating neighbors to gain illegal access to their internet connections. There are at least 4 documented cases in this condo." The police reviewed the material as I explained the full situation. "I believe this vandalism is a retaliation for exposing her scam." "Let's go talk to her now," decided the more experienced officer. I followed them down the hallway and watched from a distance as they knocked on Samantha's door. She opened it with an expression of feigned innocence that quickly turned to indignation when she was informed of the charges. "This is absurd. I was home all night." "Ma'am, we have camera footage clearly showing you throwing a rock at Mr. Harrison's window about 25 minutes ago." She continued denying for a few moments until the officer mentioned the possibility of a search warrant to check for similar rocks in her apartment. At that moment, Samantha's strategy changed dramatically. "All right, it was me," she admitted, her voice suddenly choked with tears. "But you don't understand. This man has been harassing me ever since he moved in. He accuses me of horrible things, installs cameras pointed at my door. I feel threatened, vulnerable." "Ma'am, that doesn't justify vandalism," the policewoman replied firmly. "Given the clear evidence and your confession, we're arresting you for destruction of property." I watched, a mix of relief and concern inside me, as Samantha was escorted out of the building, still shouting and promising to sue everyone. Before getting into the cruiser, she gave me a look filled with so much hatred that it sent shivers down my spine. "Be careful, Mr. Harrison," the officer advised, noticing my reaction. People like her rarely give up easily. Over the next 48 hours, the condo was buzzing with rumors. Neighbors who barely acknowledged me before now stopped to chat, many sharing their own experiences with Samantha. The pattern was the same. After moving into the building, she would target lonely or elderly residents, start by stealing their internet, and when confronted, resort to intimidation and manipulation. "She accused me of harassing her when I complained about my missing packages," said a lady from Unit 105. "Then I found out she was intercepting deliveries in the lobby. My dog ended up with a weird injury after I argued with her about a parking space," another neighbor recounted. The manager called an emergency meeting and announced that, due to the recent events, the administration was considering measures to expel Samantha from the condo for severe rule violations. 2 days later, Samantha was released after posting bail. She returned to the building accompanied by a man who introduced himself as her lawyer, James Reynolds. He approached me in the parking lot with an unexpected proposal. "Mr. Harrison, my client is willing to reimburse you for the window damage and pay a reasonable compensation if you withdraw the charges and agree not to pursue any further legal action." Why on earth would I do that? To avoid a long and exhausting legal process. His tone was soft, but his words carried calculated weight. "Besides, you've already gotten what you wanted. She's legally restrained from coming near your apartment. Wouldn't it be better for everyone to close this unpleasant chapter?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Mr. Reynolds, Your client isn't just stealing internet. She's systematically intimidating vulnerable people in this condo for years. Dropping the charges would only allow this behavior to continue. So, you're casting yourself as some kind of vigilante? No. I'm just someone who refuses to be bullied. The lawyer adjusted his tie. Well, that's a shame. I was hoping we could settle this amicably. As he walked away, I was certain that the worst was yet to come. After the episode with the lawyer, I doubled down on my vigilance. I installed extra sensors on all the windows and doors, connected to a silent alarm system that would notify my phone and the security office directly. I also added additional night vision cameras in strategic spots. For 2 nights, nothing happened. On the 3rd night, at 2:17 a.m., my phone vibrated with an alert. The exterior cameras captured 2 unknown men approaching my door. One of them carried a toolkit, while the other held what looked like a laptop and some electronic equipment. I immediately hit the emergency button on the security system and called the police. "I'm experiencing a break-in right now," I said softly. "I have the suspects on video." The men were working on my door's lock with professional tools. One of them connected an electronic device to the digital lock, trying to crack it. I quickly got dressed and grabbed a baseball bat that I kept by my bed. Not to confront them, but to defend myself in case they got in before the police arrived. As I watched the intruders on the monitor, I noticed movement in the hallway. A 3rd figure appeared out of the shadows, whispering instructions. Even in the dim light, her hair and silhouette were unmistakable. Samantha was orchestrating the break-in. "Hurry," she whispered. "This old man must be deep asleep at this hour. We just need to access the main router and reinstall the repeater. This time, use the undetectable model." The confirmation was clear. This wasn't just a break-in. It was a deliberate attempt to regain illegal access to my internet, probably to destroy the evidence I had collected. The intruders finally managed to disable the digital lock and started opening the door. At that exact moment, I heard sirens approaching. Through the monitor, I saw Samantha panic. "Police! Drop everything! Let's get out!" she ordered, sprinting toward the emergency stairs. The 2 men abandoned their equipment and tried to run, but it was too late. The hallway lights came on as 2 police officers appeared from the elevator, weapons drawn. "Stop! Police!" The intruders froze, hands raised. A 3rd officer appeared on the emergency stairs, blocking Samantha's escape. She tried to force her way past, but was quickly subdued. "This is all a misunderstanding," she shouted as she was handcuffed. "I live here. Those men are technicians. We're just fixing an internet problem." At 2 in the morning, the officer questioned. I opened my door cautiously when one of the officers identified himself. "Mr. Harrison, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine. I managed to capture everything on video." For the next 2 hours, I gave a detailed statement. The equipment left behind by the intruders included burglary tools, devices for hacking digital systems, and, most incriminatingly, 3 repeaters identical to the ones I had found before, but of a more advanced model. One of the men, when interrogated separately, confessed that Samantha had promised to pay them $3,000 to recover her equipment from my apartment and fix the internet. He also revealed that this wasn't the first time he had worked for her on night shifts. When the sun rose, the case had grown much larger. What started as a dispute over the internet now involved charges of organized crime, home invasion, attempted destruction of evidence, and violation of a restraining order. Samantha and her accomplices were taken into custody. The detective in charge came to see me the next afternoon. "Mr. Harrison, I want to commend you for your diligence in documenting everything. It rarely happens in cases like this." "Cases like this are common? More common than you imagine. Social predators like Samantha Wilson usually operate for years before facing real consequences. They rely on people's desire to avoid conflict. So what happens now? She'll face multiple charges. Based on the accomplice's testimonies and the evidence you collected, the prosecution has a solid case." He paused. "We're also investigating previous cases. We've identified similar patterns in 2 other condos where she used to live. So, this is her usual modus operandi." "Unfortunately, yes. People like her rarely change. They just find new victims." In the following weeks, the case unraveled like a ball of yarn being untangled. The investigation revealed that Samantha had been sued 3 times before for similar behavior in other condos, but she always managed to escape by moving before facing legal consequences. This time, however, the evidence was undeniable. The trial was scheduled for 3 months later. During that period, Samantha remained detained because the judge denied a second bail request after her flagrant violation of the restraining order. Her lawyer tried several maneuvers to disqualify the evidence, arguing that the recordings violated her privacy. The cameras were installed on Mr. Harrison's private property, aimed at the common areas of the condominium, rebutted the prosecutor. Besides, the defendant already had documented history of vandalism against the victim, which justified the security measures taken. While waiting for the judicial outcome, I witnessed a gradual transformation in the condo. Neighbors who barely knew each other started interacting more, sharing their own stories about Samantha. An informal support group emerged, and we discovered that her predatory behaviors went far beyond internet theft. She poisoned my plants when I complained about the noise from her parties, a neighbor revealed. My teenage son was accused by her of trying to spy on her apartment, another resident said. He almost lost his chance at college because of the police report she filed. The manager organized a meeting to discuss preventative measures against future issues like this. Ms. Wilson's case showed us that we need to strengthen our community protocols and security, he declared. We also need to improve our communication as a community. On the day of the trial, I was called as the main witness. When I entered the courtroom, I saw Samantha for the first time since the night of the break-in attempt. She had completely abandoned the guise of a helpless victim and stared at me with an icy glare. I gave my testimony clearly and objectively, describing the events in chronological order, from the discovery of the internet theft to the attempted home invasion. The technical evidence combined with the testimonies from accomplices who agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced penalties made for an overwhelming case. Mr. Harrison, asked the defense lawyer during cross-examination, don't you think you put in an excessive effort for something as trivial as sharing an internet connection? Many people do that. It isn't about sharing. It's about theft and invasion of privacy, I replied calmly. And when confronted, your client escalated to vandalism and attempted home invasion. This is far from trivial. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning with the verdict. Guilty on all charges. Samantha was sentenced to 2 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 8 months, along with financial compensation for all the identified victims. 2 weeks after the sentence, I received a call from the condo management. Samantha's apartment had been ordered for sale by court order to cover part of the compensations. A young family was set to buy it the following month. On the day the new neighbors moved in, I made a point of welcoming them with a little gift, a homemade cake and a welcome card. Daniel and Mariana, a couple in their 30s with a young daughter, seemed genuinely happy with the reception. We've heard some stories about this condo, Daniel remarked as we had coffee on my balcony. About a problematic resident? Yes, we did have some challenges, I replied, choosing not to overwhelm them with dark details. But it brought us closer as a community. Now we know each other better, and we all look out for each other. In the following months, the condo really transformed. We organized a small community garden in the space that had once been neglected, started a book club that met bi-weekly in the common area, and implemented a modernized security system. Occasionally, I hear news about Samantha through the bail officer handling her case. She serves her sentence and, according to reports, continues the same behavior, trying to manipulate other inmates and staff. On a quiet afternoon, while I was watering the plants on my balcony, I reflected on the entire experience. What began as a simple technical issue turned into a profound lesson on how to face injustice. People like Samantha thrive in the silence of victims who'd rather stay out of it. I never set out to be a hero or vigilante. I'm just a retired engineer who decided not to back down when confronted with injustice. Sometimes that's all it takes to break the cycle of abuse. Someone willing to document, persist, and expose the truth, no matter how inconvenient or uncomfortable the process may be. The peace I'd longed for when I moved here finally arrived, not through isolation, but through connection. Not by avoiding conflict, but by facing it, head on. And as I watch the ipay tree bloom once more in the garden, I feel that despite all the hardships, I've finally found exactly where I'm meant to be. The new neighbors invited me to a barbecue that weekend. Daniel wants to discuss the possibility of installing solar panels in the building, a project that perfectly blends with my electrical engineering background. Life goes on, richer and more connected than I ever could have imagined when I unpacked my meticulously labeled boxes on that first day. Some battles, no matter how hard they may be, are worth fighting. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. That, perhaps, is the most valuable lesson I've taken from my retirement so far. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get access to more stories like this.